Good evening, everybody. We are officially calling the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Reminder, we are televised. If everybody can turn their mic on when they speak into the mic. I figured we'd start today, because we're televised, just by introducing ourselves. When I go online to watch different things, I don't know who half the people are. So I'm Shane Albuquerque, born and raised in the town. Went to the schools, came back, and, I'm raising a family here now. I have 2 kids. Billy? Don't turn your mic on.
Thank you, Shane, for reminding me already. Finley Rothaus moved to town as when I was freshman year of high school and have been sitting on the planning building committee for a number of years now. And that's it, I guess.
That's cool.
Lori Rothaus, I'm the school board representative. I graduated from Merrimack High School. I actually had a couple of these people as students who are on this committee. And I was fortunate to be able to work in the Merrimack schools for 24 years before I went on to administration in other school districts. But I've been on this committee for, I don't know, Pat would have to say, but close to 20 years, I bet.
Hi, Anthony Santoriello. First year on the committee. I have 2 children in the school system, just going into kindergarten and going into 2nd grade.
Yeah, there you go.
Caitlin Vernier. I grew up here and have left briefly and have raising 2 kids here myself.
Awesome. Thank you for the summary. We also have
Yeah, you want me to?
Matt.
Okay.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Matt Chevenel, Assistant Superintendent for Business. I've spent most of my adult life in the greenhouse in the superintendent's office. And this is my boss, Bill.
Colleague, right?
Colleague.
Co-worker.
Well, that's, you make me call you Your Exalted Highness in the office. So
No, I'm Bill Olson. This is my 4th year as the Chief Education Officer in Merrimack. Wonderful town, love working here. My 55th year in education overall. So still enjoy it, still love working here, and couldn't ask to work with greater people.
And then we have Pat Heinrich, who's been here, forever, does everything, helps out with everybody, just instrumental. So now that that's done, the reason that we're here is planning and building. So real quickly, last year, I just want to review what we did. So last year, our large focus was the SAU building. We worked on a couple other things, but the major focus was the SAU, which went for bid. And I'm summarizing this for the people, if anybody's going to watch it on the camera as well as here. We had a plan with a value for a building, and we worked toward that plan. Because of there was a tax issue last year that raised everybody's taxes, and there was a lot of feedback in the community. There was a lot of discussion, and there were a few people that got together, took that feedback and tried to make the best, smartest decision that they could in a very brief amount of time with the information they had. It wasn't a good decision, but that's okay. The reason we're here working on this again is to raise any questions anybody has, both on this committee, the public. We hope the community gets involved in this. We want to discuss the building based on the answers to those questions. And we've gathered a bunch of questions from the community as well as this committee, and this is going to be the first of 2 question and answer discussions. Once we have that plan, we're going to put it up to vote, but we're going to push that to go to vote. We encourage the community to reach out with any questions they have. If you go to the main school board website, you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's the historical data that we're discussing. Everything that we discuss here will be posted there. In addition to that, we're going to be reviewing and discussing actual real tax impact once we have the value of the building, so that there's no questions. There's a lot of social media discussions with some information factual, some information that's not, And my goal, I think our goal, is just to get the community the real information and let them make the best decision possible for the school board and the school and the community. Yeah. So lastly, as well, if you go on the website, you know, there's a link to go to committees, and there's a planning and building committee link that lists all the members there. Please feel free to reach out to us. You know, there's an email listed there. It goes to all of us, and, you know, we want community participation. After this question and answer session, the architect is going to come in, and we're going to discuss with the architect the questions that we have, get some feedback, and then we'll have our plan. Today, that's my little summary. The first thing we're going to start off with is the central office proposal. So we're going to go right into the questions if you're good with that, Matt. Sure. Unless you wanted, yeah, go for it.
Go over the fire inspection report first or later on?
We absolutely can. So there's been discussion about the fire report. We have it here. It'll be posted. You know, candidly, I don't know that reading it out loud is going to, you know.
I wasn't
if you
going to
wanna
do that.
review-
I was just going to hit some of the high points.
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
If you wouldn't mind.
Please, yeah, please. Anything you want.
For the record, the inspection was done on November 7th, 2023. We received the report from the fire department on June 17th, 2024. Some of the main points is the SAU building and the special services building were homes. They were single-family homes. When the fire department looked through their records, there was never a change of use permit to allow them to be office buildings. They've been office buildings probably for 40 years. I don't know if said form existed back in the day, but we just bought them and purchased them and started using them as office buildings. As a result, once we file that change of use, then we have to do a few things. We have to have a sprinkler system in both buildings. We don't have one. We have to obviously change the use from single family to business. We have to have the basement egress, because in the basement of the central office, there is the stairs going down, and there is a bulkhead with a cement stairs bulkhead basement. That's not considered a means of egress because you can't get out of there. If there's snow on top of the bulkhead, you're going nowhere. It's not legal. So we have, I don't know, probably 8 people downstairs in the basement of the SAU. We would either have to make that some sort of a legal egress by virtue of digging it up and trenching it out and whatever, because it is fairly deep. It's probably 6 feet deep from the top of the foundation. So that's really not going to happen. Or we need to find another place for those people down in the cellar. There's also an oil tank, an abandoned oil tank in the SAU office that we have to chop up, cut up, remove. We can take care of that. The big thing is the sprinkler system and the egress. Also in this report, when talking to Chris Wyman, who's the fire inspector. He's the lieutenant, and we appreciate him doing this for us. There's nothing that really speaks to ADA requirements here. And so in talking to Neil Harris, the assistant chief, Neil recommended that I talk to Rick Jones, the building inspector. And so I had an email and I called him this week, and he's supposed to see if he can find some time next week to come down to the building and address the ADA requirements. I know for a fact the ramp going up to both buildings is a pitch of 2 and 12. It should be 1 and 12. The pitch is too steep. The railing is only 33 inches tall. It should be around 36 inches tall. So those big cement ramps have to be demolished and they have to be redone. There's a lot of stuff that has to do. So we want to get an idea of what we need to do physically to these buildings, cost it out, put it out there, and then look at, once we do that, what are we gaining? You know, we'll still have people downstairs. We may not be able to do the secondary egress from downstairs. You still have the ADA issue of people going downstairs to see human resources, because that's who occupies the downstairs building. And so there's still a lot of stuff. So we need to put together this with Rick Jones's report to get the full picture, and then put a price tag to it. Let's say it's $500,000 to take care of all of this. We know we have some work to do as far as siding goes. We know the roofs on both of those structures are at least 25, 30 years old. That needs to be redone. So there's a lot of maintenance and then corrective action that needs to be done. And then what have you done and what have you accomplished? I guess that's the answer, the question we need to answer at the end of, is it worth it? You know, it's the same thing with Brentwood, which is why we took the Brentwood building down. Brentwood was a non-conforming structure. The Brentwood building was 6 inches from the property line. That is not a code that you can get away with. I think you have to be at least 20 feet away from a property line. So that whole building had to go anyway. So that's why that building was taken down, because there's no way there could have been a renovation of that building and keep it legal at all, because it was 6 inches from the property line of Mrs. Kendall's house, who she just sold it recently, right? And so we couldn't continue on with doing anything to that building to make it suitable for any sort of central office.
Quick
Plus, there
question
were other
about that?
issues. Huh?
Quick question about that?
Yes, yes, sir.
I did. Wasn't the plan, the proposal for this SAU building that you want to build, to put it where that building was? Were you going to create more space?
We want to put it in that's an acre lot. It's nice and square. So what we want to do is we want to bring the building
Okay.
away from the property line, because that was kind of on an angle.
Oh, okay.
And so once we square it off to the road, it'll have the proper setbacks.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm glad to hear the intent on costing out. What would it look like?
What would it look like to
renovate
do
the-
this, and
the
then
current
in the
buildings?
end, what are we going to gain?
Yep.
And is it worth it? And that'll be something for the committee to discuss and for the board to discuss. So I think that's the direction we're trying to go into. But I need the other part of the piece. I need the ADA piece to put it all together.
And one little kind of rider on that as well. And so if it ends up under $1 million to potentially renovate those. Another thing to look at too, I know that the entire lower floor of the blue building hasn't been in use for, gosh, I think decades.
That's correct.
And so, and I think there was like a storm a really long time ago.
Yes.
And like remediate.
Hurricane
repair-
Sandy.
Repair was never done.
I was there.
So-
Well, there was a lot of water that came down. There still is leaking in the foundation. The foundations of these buildings are not poured cement, they're block.
Sure.
When you have block foundations, there's cracks with the grout lines, so there's always going to be water seeping in. So we just haven't.
Yep. I was
touch
just gonna
that.
mention, I think potentially looking at that as well. Like, what is it? What
We
would
could
it
do some
cost to
remediation.
remediate that
Yes.
space. Could potentially gain that half of that building
You could.
for purposes. So I
Correct.
just wanted to-
So that'd be, thank you for bringing that up. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate that. That's something else we can look at, remediating that space to see if we can, number one, take care of the issues, and number two, make sure that they don't occur into the future.
So the only point I wanted to make is that when we look back through the history of this committee, the reason that we didn't do any of that remediation is the long-term goal always was to combine those two buildings into an adequate central office space. It was never to try to figure out how, so, you know, I don't know what the cost would be, but you know, that was never our goal. Our goal and the school board's goal during the goals meeting was to present a central office, not remediation. So I don't want to go in a different direction unless everyone here agrees that's what we need to do.
I don't specifically think it's something, I think it's a question that needs to be answered. That's the only reason I'm suggesting it.
At this point, we want to get any question answered and then move forward.
Because somebody's
So we love-
somebody's gonna bring that up and say, well, what would it cost to? And so we can answer that question, then we can say, and this is what the result is going to be.
And you know, the discussion historically has been that, and still, we're working on, you know, getting our community, particularly our pay, equal to others around the area, and also the quality of work. So any new teacher, for anybody that doesn't know, comes into these blue buildings. When you're interviewed, it's your first experience in the Merrimack School District, you walk into this blue building. So, you know, we had a situation where, you know, there was a handicapped individual that had to be, you know, had to meet in the hallway. And, you know, that's kind of embarrassing. And I'm not, you know, I'm neutral, right? You know, my goal here is to stay neutral, answer all the questions. But we do need to discuss the fact that, you know, that's not a quality of work that I think a new hire who may not be, I don't know that they want, you know, that's not a good first view.
Shane, could I just clarify?
Yeah, absolutely, Bill.
They come into the green building, into our central office. The blue building is the SPED office. So
Yeah.
any new hire comes into the green building.
Yes.
Our office.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
With the ramps.
So I would suggest, I know this is maybe in the next steps, but if we go back through the history of this committee and this committee's work to the point where, I don't know, 14 years ago, 16 years ago, and we document all the work that we've done to this point, because I think that would be, you know, one of the things that we all heard was, you know, like this was a new concept. And I think that people maybe thought that because these meetings were not televised. And even though anyone in the public is always invited, they could come and sit here, they could have come to the school. It's not something, maybe now we'll get people to come, you know. But, so I think we knew, but I don't think the greater public knew the years and years of investment that has already happened.
If I can kind of tag on to that, you're absolutely correct. Ever since I got here 24 years ago, it was really a foregone conclusion that the SAU and special services are not the long-term solution for this district anymore. That a consolidated central office to have both of those functions together and working as a unit was the answer. And that was what was said when I first started here.
Well, that's why.
And that's what everybody has been working towards, board, planning and building committee, especially planning and building committee, for all these years. So.
Right. And I'm not opposed to being able to say to people, because I think if we go back through the history, we've done that work at some
Yes.
point in time in the last, we've already done that, but I think it's a good idea to be able to say, to bring this building up to compliance, even if we bought both of those buildings up to compliance, they still don't meet our needs.
Correct.
And
Correct.
is that need just because you'd rather have them in one building instead of two? What is the actual need that can't be satisfied by the
There
two
is
buildings
no
justification?
storage. There is no confidentiality, Anthony, because of the proximity of the offices. You know, the egress issue here, there's also the fire department statement that we have storage areas with materials that should not be stored within proximity of offices. So there are a number of issues. What we're trying to avoid, quite honestly, is wasting taxpayer money and spending money to update buildings that are completely inadequate by reason of their design, by reason of the amount of square footage. You know, one of the things I think we'll also make sure that the community knows is that, you know, Matt and I have talked repeatedly over the last couple of years about available commercial space. The only real sizable piece of property is the former pharmacy down here at Rite Aid.
Right, Aid,
But he and I visited that for about 2 hours with an agent, and that would also take a sizable amount of money for modification.
That's
So
get technical. That's also a triple net lease.
Yeah, it's a triple net lease, meaning that we're responsible for building maintenance, for, you know, all utilities,
Property
anything that
taxes.
breaks down. Property taxes, I think you'd cut us a break on that, wouldn't you?
We're paying.
Can you do that?
If it changes hands and it's a municipal
If it's
building.
purchased.
Just spend taxpayer money to keep up a building that we don't own.
Well, yeah, a lease. It's a lease. Yeah, it's a lease.
So at the end of the day,
I don't
we
know.
just cancel our lease and we're out. So I don't know. You know, that's one of the questions that I think we had on our
Yeah,
list.
yeah.
I don't want to get too off track, and I appreciate jumping in. And you made a good point. The reason we're televised is to raise awareness. We want this to be completely open so that anybody can jump in at any time.
Or come, come and sit.
Exactly. Go ahead, Philly.
For the same reason that you were looking into potential remediation of the basement of the blue building, should you also come up with numbers for a Rite Aid situation, just so the questions can be answered up to date? Because we've gone through that in the past, but it's been a while, so I don't know if new numbers would be worthy.
Yeah, Rich Hendricks and I, when Rich was the chairman, we went through every stick of office space in this town back in the day. And we didn't really find a lot of suitable space. The Rite Aid space is probably the closest, but like, Bill said, there's one bathroom in there and it's way in the back. I mean, the cooler section has to be totally removed. Everything has to be gutted. It's at least $1 million plus
Yeah, the
to
fit
get
up is
into
a
that
problem.
building easily.
And I would say lessons learned. So if you look like at Manchester.
And you don't own it.
Manchester School District, they refurbished the old, Mills buildings for their SAU. Then it became, spent millions, and then the rent just kept going up and up and up, so then they ended up having to leave anyway.
And it was a beautiful building. I remember seeing that
It
in
was
Manchester.
beautiful, it was beautiful,
Yes.
but they spent so much money,
They did.
and then they couldn't, they ended up they couldn't stay there because of cost. So there's, other communities have tried to do things like that, and, lessons learned.
Yeah. When I was in Jaffrey Ringe, we were, our offices were on the Contoocook River in the D.D. Bean building, overlooking the river. Nice venue, but we leased the space. But there was always the thought that a central office should be built. And a couple of years after I left there to come here, they did build their own central office because D.D. Bean needed the space to expand their factory. We were in a factory building. Our elevator was a freight elevator. This is the good old days back then. But,
Right.
that was not a long-term solution. It was a temp solution.
Right, and like if you look at Wilton Lineborough, for example,
Yeah.
their SAU is so far from any of their school campuses, so people have to travel to those SAUs. But we are, being so close to the high school, it's really, I'm grateful for that we have such a support around our major, school, the high school, with the SAU building right there.
That plot of land that used to be the Brentwood building is absolutely a prime location for a central office. It's better location than what Bedford has on County Road.
Yeah, because they have to travel.
They have to
again
travel a high
to the
school, whatever.
Bedford
Yeah,
SAU.
you're right there within 3 schools, within where the majority of the kids are, all there. So it's and the reason why the board purchased the property was not the building, it was for the land and the proximity of the land to the school district. That was repeated 1 million times.
So we may be repeating some of this with our questions. If I'm just going to jump right in so that we can just keep organized a little bit. These aren't in any order, so we may be jumping around a little bit just because they kind of discuss different time periods as well. But I'll start from the top. So just for the public, if anybody's watching, this is our question and answer. This is where, you're going to get the discussion of every question we ask. This is the first of second meeting. After this, we'll have the architect
Pat
here.
has some right here.
I'll start with the first question while she's handing those out. So what is the plan and how will it be funded if the fire marshal or school board shuts down one of the 2 buildings for one of the reasons that they've discussed in their
Well,
report?
the fire marshal says we have to have all this completed by July 17th of this year, 2024. So, or else we'll be fined. I think we'll be fined by the state fire marshal. I don't think the state fire marshal is gonna fine us, so.
Question on that. This
Yeah.
has been in the use like this since 1970, right? 54 years.
Yeah.
Has the fire department really never, ever comment on anything
Never.
in 54 years?
Never.
Wow.
I know. It's true, though.
There's been a thought that a municipality doesn't have to follow rules.
Okay. And that thought ended
The
this
school
year?
board doesn't, well, the school board doesn't have to go before the planning board for a building plan.
Uh-huh.
Everybody else does.
But does that also mean that there was never actually in the past, like an assessment to look at updating the buildings? Because if there were, then this would happen then? Was it ever actually assessed, like what it would cost it out to
No,
update
and,
the
the
buildings?
reason is a lot of people wanted to try and ignore it because it was the elephant in the room, that if they shut it down, it was going to force the issue. And, and it's true that you don't have to go through the building process and all, but there is the liability side of the whole thing. If somebody gets injured and we didn't have it up to code, it could be a real problem. But again, it was kind of ignored purposefully ignored.
Exactly.
Probably wasn't the best move, but that's what I think it
Yeah,
boiled
it
down to.
was the elephant in the room that no one wanted to address because I think everybody knew the answer.
Right.
And so it was just kind of like,
And
Let's
not
just
forget,
let
this
things
has been
go.
brought up numerous times over the last 25
Yeah.
years, and it was discussed that, you know, it wasn't the right time, or there's something else that's more pressing. So now we're at the point where, you know, we kicked it down the road enough.
yeah.
And also, I felt that people don't like being forced. They're gonna shut it down. They did that with the kindergarten. If you don't do it, they're gonna take money back from the school district. And I never liked that. So I didn't wanna be that guy who was trying to get a project complete by throwing out the scare monkey. And, but that's why it just never was done.
I agree. People tend to not believe you when you engage in emotional hyperbole. You know, sometimes when school funding is cut, whether, I don't care whether, what the community is and what state, people will say, well, the school system is going to fall apart. Well, no, it's not. All right? Will there be programs and services that are not available to students? But you can't really get so emotionally charged and have people try to believe that everything's going to fall apart because they don't believe you when you
Right.
engage in that.
Yeah. So those are the biggest reasons why that inspection never did occur.
Yeah, I think everybody knew what the outcome was going to be. They just didn't want to ask the question to kind of force the issue. And I know this is a July 17th date, but I think,
Said that a few minutes ago.
yeah, I know. But the thing is, you know, I think by then or shortly, you know, in order to satisfy, once I get the building inspector's report about ADA and everything like that, I think, you know, we have to have a plan to remedy this. The plan may be to build a new central office and take these buildings out of service,
Well, I think
period.
right now, we want it in parallel, right? You're figuring
Right.
out the cost to fix the
I'm
old
gonna
ones.
figure out the
We're gonna
cost,
continue with the questions. To see if
cost
it's worth-
benefit analysis,
Yep.
you know, long term. Let's think long term here.
We know we have to do something.
Yes,
So the question will be, do you want to spend this to fix the old, or spend this to build the new? Right?
correct.
Okay. Is that, Anthony, do you have any follow-ups on that? Okay. You know, this next question, I'm gonna skip for now because it's gonna get into another thing. All right. What staff potentially could be located in a school? Which, part of our information is a list of all the desired people that would be in this building and why. Again, part of your packet, it's right here, it's posted online. I forget who posted this question, but does somebody want to expand on that, or do we want to push that until we discuss the people?
Could I just say, just from many years of experience, and along with Matt, I'm combining sort of the green building, central office, and the blue building.
Yeah.
Student services as one. If we had to, in a pinch, in my opinion, the only people that we could move to a school is special services, student services, special education, director and administrative staff. However, with the understanding that there isn't a day that goes by that we don't interact with those staff in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of confidential documents that, you know, can't be emailed. You know, we're sharing them personally in our offices, and what I mean is meeting face to face. The staff that are in our central office, the green building, we can't be decentralized. There isn't a day that goes by that we're not interacting with absolutely everyone in that office. You know, if somebody comes in for an interview, and if I hire them, they go down to HR, they go to fingerprinting, they pick up information from others, from my administrative assistant in the office. And so everybody touches a little bit of something in that office on a daily basis. It would be a huge and unmanageable, and I mean this seriously, disruption for any of our staff in that green building to be decentralized and not with us together.
And the special services people that if you had to pick, you said may be able to, is there space for them in another location?
Very limited. You know, they would have to, we would have to find space in a particular building. That would mean probably combining, moving some classes around or some other auxiliary space, instructional space. We might lose some small instruction space with paraprofessionals or some of our reading interventionists to accommodate them. But we don't have a large amount of surplus space throughout the school district.
The one thing I noticed on that was, you know, even, I graduated in 2004, and there was a ramp up of students. We are now down here and just on our way back up. So, correct me if I'm wrong, although there may be space today or for a year or two, with that number, with the apartments coming in and everybody coming in, there's not, we're gonna run out of student space. Am I right on that?
Well, we're hoping we don't run out of student space, but
If
we are going to get
put more
tighter.
people in the spaces where
Yes,
students are now.
yes, that's correct. You know, the demographics are very interesting. Matt and I have both been very much involved in demographics and enrollment projection analysis for many, I want to say decades, not just years. And the one thing that you just mentioned that is very correct is enrollments, even though they are not entirely predictable with 100% accuracy, they are cyclical in nature. And that's generational in nature, also developmentally based also. And we are seeing a little uptick at the elementary level because of the new, whether it's single-family homes, apartments, with the understanding, obviously, that apartments do not have as intense impact as single-family homes or townhouses, but they do have some impact.
And the other thing that I was thinking of there is, you know, this year we went through, or during COVID, we went through a study about the carbon in the rooms, and you guys were able to
Yes.
remediate that in certain
CO2,
areas.
yeah.
The CO2. So, you know, my concern is we start putting more people, does that bring us back to the carbon issue, or?
Well, when we did the unit ventilators, we did 72 of them. And so we didn't take care of the entire problem because a lot of these schools were built that they had ventilation only. They didn't have makeup air coming in from the outside. And when you don't have makeup air coming from the outside, that's when CO2 raises, the more bodies you have in a classroom. That causes a lack of concentration. It can cause, you know, headaches. It can just cause a lot of issues. It's like when the room gets stuffy, you don't feel as sharp as you usually do, right?
Slept in class. That's what the
Yeah, there you go, Finley.
Wasn't your
It
fault.
wasn't
It
your
was the
fault.
air.
It's because we didn't have a unit ventilator in your classroom. So yeah, it does have a direct educational effect for both the staff and the students.
Any follow-up questions on this particular piece?
But
I-
we're
I
not
have-
talking about the administrative buildings right now, right?
No. The question is what staff could potentially be located in a school? So now we're taking
I can
Oh, sure.
I can add a little bit to that.
Sure. I was just clarifying
It's
the
like if
question.
you're looking at, you know, this list over here, this is the list of staff.
Yep.
There's a few people, you know, on page 1. The data collection specialist is at a school office. After seeing what the data collection
Sorry, hang on.
specialist can do.
Page
Yeah.
1 in this packet, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, is it the same one?
No.
I was
it's a
getting funny
different-
looks. You're on a different page
Yeah,
than us.
it's
Matt had a different one.
I had a different
it's
one.
oriented differently, but otherwise they're the same, I think.
We start with superintendent.
Yeah. I
Yes.
think the difference is one's.
One's
the other's-
I looked around and there were some confused faces and I couldn't find what you were reading, so I just wanted to clarify.
If you want to go with the fire, you could look at this page that
Love
looks
it.
like this.
Yep.
Or you could look at the page that Pat passed out that looked like that.
Okay.
So just, you know, from a positional standpoint, The data collection specialist is in a classroom, but after finding out what this individual actually does and what they can do, I think to have them with the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction and assessment right there, to be able to dig into data, to be able to analyze student performance, to be able to analyze trends, I think really, it changed my mind, basically, and I'd like to utilize that person for some stuff too. But I think that's a position that really should remain should stay in the SAU, even though it's in a school. We have our Power School manager. Right now, she's in the high school, near the high school guidance area. And it'd be nice to have her in the SAU, but that position could remain in the school, because she does a lot with high school guidance, and she does all our reporting for the state and everything like that. We also have our technology director. I'd love to have Jason Pelletier with us. He's a great asset. But if we had to, we could keep him in the school near the network closet, perhaps. But it'd be much better to have him in. He's more of a up in the air type of person. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Bill.
No, I agree. Critical position, but it does seem to be working out okay with him being
Yeah.
at the high school. You know,
Right.
I just want to point out also, Title I coordinator is presently in a school location. I think that's a position, Matt. Let me
Yes,
know if
you're
you
right.
differ. I think that's a position that could remain in a school position. Also, you know, I agree about the data specialist. You know, a lot of school systems say we engage in data-driven decision-making or data-informed decision-making. I'm not sure how much credibility that area there is. And I'm not referring just to this school district, but many school districts. We have the real deal in terms of a data specialist right now. If you remember, she gave a report with Amy at the last school board meeting, or one of the last school board meetings. She's outstanding. And she does allow us to know exactly where we are with students in a variety of academic disciplines. So would it be great to have that person in the central office?
think so.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Registrar, we have in the Student Services building. That's a position, you know, that would be nice to have in the central office. We prefer to have that person there, but if push comes to shove, if we can't, then we'll find a... That person meets with the parents when they come in and register. We have a centralized registration process because that allows us to understand how many new registrations we have of students, the grade levels, and so that we know that in real time, as opposed to them going to the buildings like many school districts do in New England and have them register at the school. But sometimes during the summer, that information is 3, 4, 5 weeks delayed before it gets to us. And so we want to know in real time how many kids are entering our school district that are new to the district and what grade level, so that we can be prepared if we need to move anything around or make any alternative arrangements in terms of classroom locations and configurations.
The reason I asked is because if they're in the student service and a community member wants to come in, they just knock on the door, you guys can let them in. If they are in a school, it's a little bit different as far as access. I didn't know if that was gonna
That's
cause
what
a
I was
problem.
kind of bringing, you know, even if special services is located in a school, we don't have any separate entrances in the schools. You have to go through the main office. And so if, let's say, special services is located in the far wing of James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, it's probably 150 yards away from the front door. Someone would have to go to the front office, get that person, and then walk them through with their kids, perhaps. Same thing with the registrar with kids, perhaps. And everybody else in the school during passing time would see that they're coming in to see special ed, or seeing they're coming into the registrar's office. There's no neat, easily accessible area of any of our schools that would lend itself to a separate, secure entrance. So that's a difficulty.
Lori, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, my only follow-up point is,
you know, Merrimack is the 8th largest community in the state of New Hampshire. And the school board has been given, the administration, a focus on results, and we're data focused, and we're really focusing on improving our schools. We're not gonna be able to do all of that work if we have everyone in 4 different schools. And if we wanna look at the 81 school districts in the state of New Hampshire and find out if we have administrators in all different buildings, I don't think there's a school district in New Hampshire that has people in all different buildings. So, just to answer that question, the school board would definitely, in my opinion, be opposed to putting people in all different buildings.
And
We have a focus on our goals. We have a vision for that space. We're moving forward on what our objectives are and how we're gonna meet those objectives. So when we ask, like, for right now, like you said, do we have some space maybe for a year or two? But we have plans, you know, we have a vision. So I don't see it being workable.
And the, in the,
Anthony,
the-
go ahead. Oh,
and the
sorry.
general enrollments are on the uptick. We're seeing when I first got here, there was 4,900 kids in this school district. Now it dipped down to around 3,400 kids. It's going back up. We're gonna hit 5,000 again.
So, and I just wanted to say something about that too, you know, so when I was a teacher at Merrimack High School, we had 1,800 students at Merrimack High School.
I know.
So.
Without the
but
three-story
what happened
addition.
is, if you ever study a community that puts in a new high school, so Bedford Forever went to West High School.
Yes.
As soon as Bedford put in a high school, a lot of families go to the new high school. The same thing happened with Concord and Bow. And so we had that effect, right? Because there's a new high school next door, people moved. That's why there's more kids in Bedford than, you know, because everyone moved to Bedford because of the new school. Now that's settled down and people are coming back and we're seeing the projections of more children in our schools. But that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
Anthony, go ahead.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm not at all a proponent of trying to push people out into the schools that have to meet with the community and things. But I just kind of want to summarize and I guess kind of point out that, so with the 2 buildings that right now, you know, are basically in the proposed location, they're like 50 feet away, and right next to each other, like, they do house all of these people less, it looks like 4.
Probably,
And
yeah.
so it would be about 4 heads added, and just pointing out again, yeah, there's an entire floor of one of those that's unused. So I only say that in the spirit of, I know it sounds like, I forget who said it, but since you got here many, many years ago, it was like always a foregone conclusion that the space isn't workable and at some point we should fix it. But I just want to say, it seems on the face of it like there is honestly space right now in hand with that floor remediation in the blue building, and so.
That was actually part of the study
Let's
that
look at that.
we recently did in the video. You know, you got to keep in mind those are houses that are over 50 years old.
Yeah.
So we're talking about renovating a block foundation, you know, wood house for a long-term.
But you say you did that study, that's already been costed out and looked at?
No, it hasn't.
Okay.
No, as you know, that's what he's working on now.
Yeah,
That's
it was a
gonna be one of the
it was a
two things.
walkthrough.
My-
So after I get Rick Jones's ADA report, that's when I'm gonna put all the numbers to it.
Yeah, peace.
My point is I know you weren't with us on that, but you know, if you'd have you watched the video?
Well, no, I did better. I did see the video, but
Oh, good.
that actually took me. And
Oh,
that
great.
was when I saw how much empty space there was and how, you know, yeah, there's like old, you know, there's old kitchen stuff, like, that could be taken out.
Oh yeah,
You
not
know,
worried
like-
about that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so.
The space was the issue over there because you're talking about special services and special needs people that's kind of confidential type stuff.
Sure.
And there's no way to make that confidential. I mean, even if you were to rip out all the walls and build offices, you're talking about building offices in a house as opposed to building offices in a building. So again, point taken. Point
And
taken.
the ADA compliance, yes, I was gonna say, and you need ADA compliance, so you need to have an elevator so
Sure.
that people can get downstairs to access any of that space, and that is an added cost. And maintenance of the elevator. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just thinking,
Just things like that.
and
yeah.
I'm not trying to argue it, but just pointing out, but yeah, like, you tear down 2 buildings, you build a new building, you put all those same things in it.
Tearing
And
down 2
so-
houses.
Which are, they are buildings.
2.
though.
But they're not
It's a
built
house.
for what they're needed for.
It's a different
So
structure
you would
too.
have to remodel and make a bunch of
Absolutely.
changes
Yep.
to an old space that will eventually need to be, again, kept up with sooner, more maintenance done sooner versus a newer building, right, that is gonna have, the maintenance wouldn't be that quick of like the old
Yeah.
things that you don't fix in the remodel that will need to get fixed 5 years from now and that kind of thing.
Yeah, looking forward to that,
Um,
because if the difference turns out to be $1 million versus $4 million, like, that's a lot of extra.
Yeah, and
money
I don't
to
think
the-
they would do a basement. Basement felt like the wrong choice with the world. Just kidding. But in general, I didn't think we were at. I thought that this was a single floor. Like what they're looking at was just that single
new
floor to
construction.
make. Yeah, a new structure would be so that they could easily have that ADA compliance of that at least of having the stairs.
You know, if I could mention also, keeping in mind that if you just renovate what we've got, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, I think both buildings are about 2,400 square feet.
Yes, including the basement.
So that, that's only 4,800 square feet, and we still have no space for storage, no space to separate from any types of materials or supplies or heating units that the fire department points out, no conference space. We live a nomadic existence in terms of having to go to different schools to meet. We can't have any meetings in either of the 2 buildings, and so we're only talking 4,800 square feet with both those buildings total.
Versus the proposed area of 11,000, just to clarify.
The way I see this whole thing is, the school district is desirous of the new facility. I think we should put the numbers together as you had suggested, so people have the answers.
Exactly.
If they want to stick with 2 old houses, they could do that, I suppose, and deny the path that the school board is desiring to go. But for me, sitting on the planning and building committee, it's to get those numbers together, put it out forward so that people can see what it is, and then you guys carry the water and push your facility, or not. That's it. For me here, that's what it's about. Get the numbers together, because I can be easily agnostic on whatever happens. But the school district is looking at that path. On the surface, I see it is kind of a waste of money to be throwing at these buildings. I'm dealing with it with the South Station. I'm sitting here going, I don't want to put any money into that place. It's not a facility that's worthy. But I don't know what's going to happen with that. It's still being kicked down the road a little bit. But so that's just for me. We've got to put the numbers together so the answers can be had.
So you're saying like, put the numbers for like, if we had to put an elevator, if we made it ADA
Yeah,
compliant,
I mean,
if we had to upgrade all
but-
the.
and I'm not even suggesting you guys push that. You
Well,
want.
that's, so I get it, but here's my own, I'm just gonna push back just a little bit, I get it. Except for we've discussed it and we're in August, we're gonna be in September. I feel like we're taking 5 steps backwards
No.
to go forward, but if that's what we have to do, then okay, but that's,
Yeah, I think you need the answers to the questions. It doesn't have to be a full-blown,
all right,
You
well,
know,
that's.
plans and
full plan,
everything.
Just like, yes, this is
because
what.
because your desire as a school board is to move forward with a new facility. We have to have those answers. I imagine the rehab would be the cost of a new building. I think it'd probably be cheaper to build a new house instead of rehabbing it, with putting in sprinklers and everything.
Let's not forget, in construction, if you rehab something, you have to be up to code with the entire facility
Right.
that you rehab.
Substantial.
So we're gonna-
The cost of a renovation is probably around 20% higher than building brand new.
Right.
Turn your mic on.
Usually the cost of a renovation is around probably 20% higher than brand new. It could be higher than that
Right.
at this point
So
in time, especially if you're gonna gut stuff down to the studs.
Right. I tend to talk in circles, so I apologize, but just to put it finally on the table for me, in the end, they want the school building. We just have to put the numbers out there for them, and the architect's rendering of whatever they think it should be, and then the school board and the district can decide what the best thing is for them. I'm sitting here as the apparatus to put those things together for you.
I think we liked our initial plan of let's get what, you know, the fire department needs us to do a bunch of stuff. Let's get
Yep.
that cost.
Yep.
That's a requirement. You either do that or we don't. That's a choice we have. At least we can start there. If we don't do that, well then, and all those people, we have to either pay the fines or we have to discuss the next plan. But I think that number is the first number we need. I'm with you. I'm not sure, you know, I'm with you, Anthony, that you want to look down every road, and I'm 100% with you, and we absolutely can. But how do we engage? That's a lot of work to engage someone to provide a number to renovate that entire building.
I'm just, you know,
Go
the
ahead.
charter from
Oh,
the school
sorry.
board is, you know, in part, it's B under number 3, update information regarding previously explored options and alternatives.
That wasn't a previously explored option.
Oh, so
Nobody
like,
thought that was a good idea.
using the buildings that we have today was
Yeah.
never even on the table.
Absolutely, but not redoing the entire building. I think it was rehabbing to what we need to do. I don't know that anybody, I mean, we literally have to rip the building apart and rebuild it. Am I missing something there?
We'll see. That's a good question for Paul Marinese, the architect.
Good, Caitlin.
You know,
Yeah.
he already has a copy of the fire inspection report. I want him to get him the ADA report, and then he can put together a schedule of values of what it would be to bring it up to code. But then again, the question is, even if it's up to code, does it serve you well? I don't want to be premature and answer that question, but I think I know the answer to that. So we'll see.
But so first, there's 2 different code. You
Yeah.
can bring it up to code, right, as a dwelling.
I want to do.
But
yes.
I would like you to bring it up to code for an ADA compliant.
That's precisely
place
what I
that
want to
is-
present to
because
you
that's
guys.
Oh, that's a good
very
That's a
different
good
than what is in here for the needs that he wants to see. He wants to see some easy, like, if you don't want this to say that nobody should be in here full stop, do these things, but if you want this to be, it's ADA compliant, and which is if you're gonna make any alterations to a existing building that's after 1977, has to be considered fully accessible going forward. So you would have to get a certification of I don't even know my own writing. Yes, certification of equivalency. I don't know. That is required, states that it's up to code. So that's like a whole separate thing, because it would be for general public and not just for
Correct.
people that are
Correct.
like somebody that's coming in for a job or anything.
Right.
Are there any
like that.
privacy requirements to that point?
There's like different things. Oh, you mean for them to come and look? Or
Is ADA, or is there any code that if we have some sort of student services there, are there privacy requirements now or no? You may not know the answer to that.
Well, I
What do you
mean,
for
certainly,
conversation?
Yeah.
Confidential conversations. you mean?
yeah.
certainly
Yes, I'm
you
sure.
want,
Space.
yes, you want space that that allows you to have confidential conversations, because none of that information, particularly when we're talking about special education services, none of that information can be shared.
So to Caitlin's point, we not only have to bring it up to ADA, we have to bring it up to some sort of privacy.
That's one of the issues that we have right now, is that, we're in such close proximity, and the materials are such that they're not sound buffering, that we can hear each other's conversations in the offices.
And while we could try to utilize downstairs, again, you would have to have an elevator
Yeah.
in both buildings to be able to utilize downstairs, because it's somebody that is coming to talk about their child for student services may also have a disability, and they can't just go down the stairs
Yeah.
easily, kind of thing.
It's like giving a 30-year-old car a new paint job. Okay, you're just masking it, and that's all you're doing.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. We just want to make sure we vet everything out. Yes.
So I just want to, again, say that I don't know how many hours that this will take to go back and do that work. And do we have the contractor willing to do that? Are we gonna have to pay the contractor, because then it would have to go through the school board to pay
That
a
is something I'll
contractor?
have to do some research on, to
Right.
see how many more favors I
Well,
can
but-
get.
and that's right, because when Lori Peters came and gave the charge, she didn't say go back and, that wasn't the charge, so that's why I'm asking.
The charge just is, you know, we are here to help the community make an informed decision about this. I appreciate the charge. We don't necessarily work particularly with those guidelines. That was a recommendation which we love. But I think, and I'm with you that we don't want to spend a bunch of money, but we do want to make sure, to Anthony's point, that we vet out all the options so that at this particular, you know, once we're done here, everybody should know, the whole community should know all the options. You know, and I'm with you, and I don't think, we don't have to hire somebody, but, you know, maybe the architect has a building that he just did recently that he can give us some sort of budget
Well,
for
that's
that.
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying, like,
if
how,
we're
we
talking,
have to hire somebody because
No,
we
no.
can't- they're not free.
I don't think.
They're
people-
not,
No.
they're not free, but we could,
I think it would be a mistake not to hire someone. I think, Matt, you think very highly of Paul Mariners.
yeah. Paul and
Waiting-
Frank, they've been in the business for half a century. They built half of Pinkerton. They were the architects in Bedford High School and Ross Lergio Middle School.
I
So
feel like this is
these
a-
aren't
Yeah.
guys that are like, you know, flying, you know, just building Reed's Ferry sheds. I love Reed's Ferry
They
sheds.
should have.
'Cause I didn't mean
budget.
that.
See, if we
I mean,
were
I'm
to
in
develop,
that
if we were to
world.
develop those estimates, and I were a taxpayer, first question I'd ask is, Bill, what are your qualifications for estimating, you know, major additions or renovations? Have you done life cycle costing of the facility? And we need somebody who specializes in that. And yes, it may cost a little bit of money, but that's the only way we're gonna gain credibility.
I have a feeling once you get the budget, you're not going to need to spend any money. To Caitlin's point, you just tell them we need to add 2 elevators.
Well,
one in
the
each
elevator's
building.
gonna be at least probably $300,000 a piece.
It's going to be over that.
Yes.
Constructions, I've been doing it for 15 years.
All right.
Just ask for 2 elevators and ADA compliance, and we're going to be out of
'Cause
budget.
they're
You guys are
freestanding
going to quickly
structures.
realize
Yeah.
it's going to be $2 million bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, for the 2 building at least,
Yeah.
and then we're still at a point where we need to build out offices, we need to build privacy, and we don't have the room for it. So the reason I was doing, you know, I'm with Laurie the fact that we don't have a bunch of time. I'm with you that we need to get somebody to do it, but I have a feeling they can budget that with like a phone call.
I think so.
Yeah. We started this because what staff could potentially be located. Are there any other notes that we want to make on that? Or any other,
I think everybody else needs to be in.
I think we've talked about the access piece, which is an important part. I think we talked about space, which is going to continue to decrease as student population increases, which is proven from the numbers. I mean, we just added an extra kindergarten class. Those kindergartners are going to grow up. So, actually, we added another one over Thornton's too. So is there anybody else that you want to call out specifically, or did we summarize that well for you?
No, I think, you know, most of these people, and Anthony, as you noted, with very few exceptions, really need to be aggregated together because we interact with each other all the time. And oftentimes in a confidential, there's very little that we do that is not confidential in nature.
We appreciate that. Those are our kids here.
Oh, it's a true statement, you know.
All right, keep going down this. How would locating staff in school disrupt admin functions? I think we discussed that a little bit. School functions, will students have to walk through the area where the staff are located? We summarize that. Does anybody have any further questions on that? You know, access, administration, I think we talked about that. Next question, how often do members of the public need to meet with these staff? You mentioned new students, new hires.
We have new students coming in to register with their parents. I often meet with a parent or parents, and sometimes with a child. If there's a child who's experiencing some discipline issues, and this is a reality. We had a situation this year. We had a child who was exhibiting some frequent behaviors in a school that were quite problematic. And I always like to meet with the parents and meet with the child also to just talk it through in terms of, you know, that I'm going to kind of be watching and I want to make sure we support this child. I'm going to check in every so often. The last 6 months of the school year, there were no issues with this particular child. And so sometimes you need to bring them in, and parents appreciate that. We have parents who come in an awful lot who just have an issue in school or with something else, either an athletic field or something going on in a classroom, something going on that, you know, a decision that an administrator made that didn't like it. So they don't come in all day. But I would say on the average, we probably have 5 or 6 parents, maybe closer to 5 a day on average that would come in.
A day.
Yeah, a lot of them, a lot of, you know, a lot of the traffic is employees. They want to know a little bit more about the interpretation of a contract. Do they have a question on their compensation or the benefits? Something changes, they get married and they want to change the withholdings, et cetera. So there's a lot of traffic in and out of the central office.
The next question was, what is the cost of new furniture? That was actually a budgeted line item, I believe, that you had thrown in at some point.
It could be part of the general conditions, whatever, but we're gonna bring over all our desks and furniture and whatnot. So we'd be looking, you know, for furniture for a conference room. So it's not gonna be anything astronomical. Furniture for a break room, that's about it. We could bring over the vintage kitchen table from the SAU, because I would miss that dearly. 1950s.
It's their original kitchen.
Minimal cost on the furniture.
Minimal cost on the furniture will not break the bank. that's for
What's the
sure.
student population of each school and the capacity for each school?
Now, I have go ahead, Bill.
No, I was gonna
You're
say,
gonna
do you-
go, you're gonna chomp on the bit
No,
here.
I did not bring those figures with me. I should have. But,
I have some populations right now, just the current ones, but we're not done enrolling kids.
No.
So, you know, Master Cole Elementary School is a little over 400. Reed's and Thornton's Reed's is closer to lower 500s. Thornton's is closer to 550. J. Muse is around the same, around 550, 530. The middle school's a little bit over 500, and the high school's hanging in there around 1,100 kids. What are the capacities? Well, a lot of the utilizations of the space have changed over the years. There's a lot more programs that were held in places that they shouldn't have been held in, like custodial closets, like under the stairwells, like in the corner of a hallway, that have moved out into these spaces. And Bill, I don't know if you can talk more about that than I, but a lot of what was considered capacity is not considered capacity now. And Pat has a whole thing here about the
The
special
last
needs.
time the Planning and
Yeah.
Building Committee did
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
utilize the capacity of the school, we actually went through the square footage of each and every classroom. And one of the things we discovered at the time, and this was just as you were joining the committee, Finley, but we discovered that the capacity at Reed's and Thornton's, their classrooms aren't standard size. So we had to downgrade the numbers from the 28 or 30 or whatever it is. But we went through every single space. We also took a look at the labs. The state has educational administrative rules that have the force of law. And we went through class size is grades 2 to kindergarten to grade 2 is 25 students or fewer per educator. They're hoping to have to achieve a class size of 20 students or fewer per educator. Grades 3 through 5, it's 30 students or fewer. But it also tells you how many square feet you can have per student. So if the classroom is not standard size, then you have to cut down. Lab classes, in no case shall exceed 24 in a class.
Science labs.
What?
Science, yeah.
So inside home economics or family and consumer science and
Right.
in shop and that sort of thing. But you went down through these numbers. Computer classes. And you're right, classes have changed, so it's time. We haven't actually looked at the class capacity, the school capacities, since the middle school and kindergarten were added, to go back and change, because those classes that used to be first grade are now kindergarten, so the capacity of the building went down because it has kindergarten. And that's something that the Planning and Building Committee did, you have the maps in your packet here that Matt gave you of the square footage.
Yep.
And each of these also, if you look through, talks about the space that's required for administrators. That the administrators shall have a private office, and the assistant principal should have a private office. And I started thinking as you were talking right now, what does it say about senior administration? And you know what the ed administrative rules look like in this state. They're pages and pages and pages and pages and going through them.
And Pat, I just have something to add to that. I just thought of this. So, our schools, especially our high school, has to be accredited by NEASC, and NEASC accreditation comes to your schools. And if you have SAU in your schools, you get a warning from NEASC because they feel it's a
Really?
really bad system, and they want you to figure out how to get rid of that blemish. So when she just said that, the rules, but I know NEAS, that's a big no-no.
And just, common sense, dumb math here. 2004 was our highest point. We've gone down, we're at a low point. When you get a bunch of room, that's when we move people around, we create more programs. Now, when we go back up, we're already gonna have an issue at some point with the programs that we've added and need to break down. I mean, we talked last year about the French class that didn't, or the class that didn't, nobody was attending it. That's a whole class that was taken up that, we need to think about things like that. So, go ahead, Caitlin.
I was just gonna say also, like the classes that do Title I services and speech services and the increase that we've had in the special ed within our district, I think it's 29%, something like that, that it would be requiring services that child would need to be able to be in a separate space. They can't have their peers around them when they're trying to get speech, so they need to be able to have those, whereas they didn't have that nearly as much when we were in school. So
And that's a
those
really are big point
new
because
space.
since COVID
It's
and the
increased.
aftermath of COVID, that's something that the school board has spent a lot of time. We're talking about learning gaps, but you're correct. The number of students that are requiring services because of learning gaps has absolutely increased, and given us, a challenge on the school board level.
And that's a whole section that's been added to these rules. I know you have them in front
That's
of
what
you.
I'm starting,
but
that's why I'm reading it.
32111, special
I was-
education.
I was
It
starting
never
to
said
read it, and I
600
was like,
square feet.
oh, man.
And that's what.
That's gonna have an
Space that's,
increase.
because you brought up exclusively for
Yes.
special education, private office for this one, private office for that one.
That's what made me think of that, is there weren't tons of private
No.
offices for speech, and it's not that COVID, caused these regressions. It's that these kids didn't get these services because they were home, and you can't provide those services to a 3-year-old on a computer. It just doesn't work that way. So now that they're in school, they're finally able to get those, and they need that space.
Yeah, we don't want to forget also the requirements, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years of English language learners. And so that consumes additional space. And we are having an increase in the number of limited English-speaking families entering Merrimack. And we have an increase in English language learner students each and every year.
Any other questions on that? Okay. The next question I think we should discuss later would be, what would the cost to build the building as prefab? So the reason we're here answering all these questions is to determine what we want for the building. So, until we figure that out, I feel like we can talk about that. And you've gone down that road before. I know there's different stipulations with prefab buildings. We need to bring in different sewer, and it's cost maintenance each year. If you want to touch to that,
By
yeah, absolutely.
prefab,
I get-
let me just clarify. By prefab, you mean a modular
Yeah.
building, right? Made of soft materials, not brick and mortar.
Yeah, temporary. Well,
We
temporary.
Is meant to last.
Yeah, because I'm very familiar with those,
Back
and
in-
Matt is also.
Back in 2013, when we put it up on the ballot, that was a steel prefab building quoted to us by a division of Sullivan Construction in Bedford, and it came in at $1.7 million. That was in 2013. And so that was a while back, and it was a steel prefab panelized building. Now, by prefab, is that what you're talking about, or are you talking trailers?
Who asked the question? I'm not sure if it was Caitlin or Anthony.
There are modular units.
Okay. If nobody cares, then that's great. If
Yeah, I
somebody
can
in this room asked that question, I'm not coming up with these
We,
questions.
we went
Okay.
through the whole thing in 2013,
Yeah.
and
No,
there
but you
was-
had mentioned
there-
you got
right.
questions from the community, or Caitlin did, so we're
Okay.
pushing for that. But if you didn't ask it, that's great.
Okay.
I think we've talked about it a bunch. If nobody cares to discuss it anymore, I think it's silly, candidly, but that's just my opinion. Just because it's temporary, and again, I'm not a big fan of
Well,
building
Bill
things
was
twice.
saying with the modulars and everything like that, there are soft materials. The walls are soft materials. It's, you know what it is.
Structurally also, one of the things you have to be considerate of, obviously, is snow load. I can tell you, we had a modular office building in my former district in Westford. And there were times during the winter when we had a deep but also moisture-laden snowfall. And what you look for is a deflection of the sprinkler heads from the drop ceiling. And if the sprinkler heads, because there's stress on the trusses, if the sprinkler heads are a little bit offset from the ceiling, you've got to take the people out of the building and remove the snow. And we used to do that once in a while.
Rain, foot and a half of snow on a roof.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if it was a very heavy moisture content.
Did we shovel roofs one year?
We have shoveled roofs in the past. Yes. Yeah. We have done that at the high school.
That,
some
and
other-
if there was a tropical storm or hurricane or a tornado warning, because I built that building, we had to vacate the building temporarily. We had to move to a brick and mortar school because, if there was and granted, tornadoes are few and far between, but if there was one, we were always concerned it would have wound up in a different zip code, so.
Question was raised whether there's a future use for the green, blue, red buildings, and demolition was discussed. Can we see any artifacts from that analysis?
We had Steve Keach here, and then we had VHB here a couple of times. The Brentwood, the green and blue space, they're going to be like parking. Maybe where the green building would be, we would demo that and create some green space for the high school kids. Make it like a little kind of enclosed or fenced-in nice place that they could go to and eat their lunch or something like that. And then where the Blue House is, special ed, that's a perfect place for parking that's closer proximity to the front door of the high school. And so we would redo that. There's plans that we have for that we brought before the, more handicap parking. We don't have enough handicap parking, right? So we would need that, and plus, if we're gonna have the SAU office on the site of where Brentwood is, there's not enough parking there, so we would utilize that area where the Blue House would be to be parking for the SAU, especially if we have a conference room there that we could utilize for some sort of staff training or our leadership meetings or whatever.
A follow-up question to that would be, putting the SAU and special education together, does that increase the risk of information spills?
No.
No.
As long as information is held confidentially, properly contained, and that our conversations are confidential within, walls, no, there's no issue.
Sorry, just stepping back a little bit. Yeah, looking at the plan here. So the current administration building, it looks like on that plan would just be replaced with grass.
Yeah.
Like just grass.
Yeah.
And then, a couple parking spots
Yeah,
where the other one was.
Yeah,
And
we
so-
wouldn't want to put impervious material everywhere, paving everywhere. It's
But-
just, some green space would be very desirable.
Yep. Okay. So, it's just interesting, like, you talk about like not having space for storage. Was it like less than 2 years ago that other building did exist?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah, it was 2 years ago the red building was there. It was 10,000 square feet. It wasn't used.
well, but you could have, right? Like, I guess I'm just
No.
confused. So you
We-
couldn't have used it for storage or anything? I had never been in there.
You could see through to the outside when you're standing in the building.
The Brentwood building.
Oh, yeah.
It was rotting. The police used it to train. The DEA used it to train.
Yeah, peace.
What,
I'd
what
never.
was it? What was interesting about it was hodgepodge. It was like a homeowner put an addition on, then another addition. The floors, I remember, you were walking
Uneven.
through a hallway. The floors, if you didn't pay attention, you could trip because of the rise or whatever.
The
It was-
hallways are really, really
Really
narrow,
narrow.
and like Finley said, like there would be a step up and a step down.
Yeah.
And it was 6 feet from the property line.
It was
Yeah,
so
6
interesting.
feet, 6
6 inches.
6 inches
Oh,
from the
Jesus.
property
thought it
line.
was
There
6
was
feet.
not the quite,
And my favorite feature of that building, which still perplexes me today, is an ADA graded ramp that terminated to a set of 4 stairs.
Yes.
And I'm looking at this going, why?
It was a homeowner special. It truly.
I
was.
don't know. It's like, really, this is bizarre. Totally this, and it was in very, very, very poor shape. And when we bought it, it was, you know, all the HVAC things didn't work. The heater, we went with John Manuel. He was the fire marshal here, and we actually had to break into one of the back rooms where there was a heater. And it's a good thing because the thing was to the point where it was almost going to catch fire. So the building almost self-demolished itself by virtue of flame. But we did
Delay the call-
find that, and we
delay
did
the
shut
call
it
to
down.
fire.
Yeah, I know.
Keep
But,
cranking, Anthony. Just one point of, Bill has to go in 12 minutes, so if you have any questions directed to Bill, that'd be,
I'll try to be concise with this. So, assuming for a moment that, yeah, the new building, it would be built, like, I just couldn't help but want to ask that question, like, of the 2 buildings that exist today, like, could they not, either one of them be repurposed, and could we not harvest value from that? Like, just leveling one and filling it and putting grass there where you had a building, it just feels like maybe in a few more years when we're like, oh, we want that, well, we had a building and we tore it down. So I guess
We'd still have to sprinkle it. We'd still have to do the ADA piece. But if I was going to choose a building, I'd choose the SAU office over the special ed building
Sure.
because I'd rather have the special ed building be parking.
Be that as it may, I just wanted to raise that as an idea
Yeah.
because I think it could be a viable space that gets
I
used
don't
for
disagree with you.
things, And
Yes.
so just pushing it down didn't seem like the first thing we should do.
keep going, Anthony. If you have
That's
more
all.
questions.
Nope. Peace.
I think some of these further ones are yours if you wanted to discuss them.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit confused on.
I
all of
and I
these,
am
so-
too. The way
Oh, yeah.
I copy and pasted, and it was a quick email, so that's why I'm
Okay.
opening it up to you, Anthony.
Yeah, all right.
We
I'll
got a
take
lot of
quick look through.
plans. That's all I can say over the
So,
years.
yeah, it was just a little confusing trying to look through the notes from previous
is.
years to understand. Like at one point, I think there was like a proposal to actually update the Brentwood building. And there
Yes.
was like a target put on it, like, oh, we could make this the SAU building. And then literally 5 months later, it's like, tear it down. And I was like, what is happening? And I
See,
can't
we-
find plans anywhere.
The one thing that you didn't see, there were 3 scenarios, because someone made the comment, I think who was on the town council at the time, that it would be more cost effective to put an addition onto the high school. So we went to put an addition onto the high school, build a new building, renovate Brentwood. The addition onto the high school was the most expensive plan. Renovating Brentwood was more expensive than building it from scratch. So I still have those old sheets somewhere, but I've got so many different plans. It's kind of hard to keep them all
And
straight,
none of
but I
it-
do have them.
Yeah, I couldn't find any of it online. He said it was online
I don't think I
somewhere.
put I
Couldn't
don't think I
find
put
it.
those online, but we
So,
did
he's-
do three different proposals all at once, and we discussed it at a board meeting.
You know,
So-
I have to say, just because I've only been in that building I was only in there about 4 times since I've been here, and I can't imagine anyone proposing, whether it was 10 months ago or 20 years ago, renovating that and repurposing it. It was an absolute mess.
Yeah, it was in the
Absolute
minutes. I
mess.
just was like, where are the plans?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can skip a lot. Some of this actually that he put on here wasn't questions that I necessarily intended for you gentlemen. It was me trying to understand the history of like how we got to this moment as a committee. So
Okay.
we can forego those.
Thank you.
so I think, if we did the history, if we could spend some time going back through the 20-year history of, when we made the first, we went before the town for the prefab, and it failed by how many votes, Matt? 60
60 something?
something.
It was
Small number.
rather, it got a majority. It didn't get a super majority.
We had a majority, but we didn't have the right number. And then from there, we never brought it back forward.
We did a capital
This
reserve fund
committee
first, yes.
wanted to bring it back forward every single year, and the school board said no, every single year. So last year, in the goals meeting in June, recognizing that this was a need that has been a need for a long time. That was before the December tax bill went out, and it was a shock to a lot of people, and we just lost a lot of momentum during that period of time.
All right, we have Bill for 10 more minutes. Does anybody have anything that we want to discuss? I mean, at this point, we've kind of gone through the questions, but we want to make sure we answer anybody's question that has one right now. Because this is kind of like the first question and answer, and after this, we're going to have we're going to discuss internally, and then we're going to have the architect in to ask the final questions. Is there anything else we want to discuss? Caitlin, Anthony?
Are we gonna do next steps?
We're not done. We
not
just
done.
want to
Okay,
make sure that we're good with Bill because he's got to leave.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to leave a little bit early. We've got our meetings up in Portsmouth, and I'm gonna head up there tonight.
You're an animal. I feel like you work 24 hours a day.
No, this is the guy who works 24 hours a day. One of the things I think we want to do also is keep talking about the fact that, as we talked about in the Budget Committee, the cost of doing nothing is not nothing. That, those costs between bond rates, materials and supplies have been subject to inflation, and some, for example, telecommunications or other areas may have declined over the last 5 to 10 years, but most have increased. And what was the cost back then? What's the cost now? And at a particular rate of inflation that we might assume, what might the cost be if we continue to delay the project?
And, from a construction industry standpoint, things were really busy. COVID increased costs, things were really busy. We have a short opportunity here where things have started to do this a little bit. And I'm talking Boston construction now. Just started, not costs, but work. So if we pass this, if we decide as a community we pass this, when we build this thing next year, it's going to be a great time for people to bid on it aggressively. So although we have a budget and we want to go at that, when it comes time to build, there's a buyout process there. And, I think we have a window that we want to take. If we decide to, I think we want to take advantage of that window.
That's an important point to keep in mind, because when the construction industry is really at a peak in terms of business, what happens is you get the general contractors who are fishing, and they'll throw in a bid that's 20, 30, 40% over the normal and customary cost. And so that's good news to know.
We're seeing more and more bidders on the same contract that's a lot smaller now. That's a clear sign, and the values are, the margins are coming down. Mm-hmm. So it's a good time to buy building. Particularly if we keep that locked in rate that Matt had. We all see what's going on with that. I mean, there's the math is working out here. So appreciate that. Bill, any other comments before you got to go to your next meeting?
No.
Okay, cool.
Well, I'll be glad to answer any other questions you might have.
Yeah, we really don't have any other?
Just my only question is, do you have enough, are you able to quickly get things together so we can have those answers that kind of went around, the questions went around tonight?
We'll find that out tomorrow morning. I'll make a few
We've been talking about it a lot for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Wonderful.
we'll be able to do it.
Awesome. Let's see, review of questions, next steps. So we have, we got Matt that's working on the costs for ADA compliant.
Well, for the information I have from the fire department, I still need the ADA piece from the building inspector, but I can kind of talk with my architect about that too to help me out a little bit.
Correct me where I'm wrong here, does a month make sense for our next meeting? Or Does that, it gives you enough time? We can email back and forth and kick around, okay. Does that work for you guys? Okay, so a month, would be the week of September 7th? Yep,
September 7th?
sorry, September 4th. If that works for everybody, I think we'll set that as our next meeting. Pat, if you don't mind helping with that.
Okay, this room is actually open on that date.
Excellent. September 4th. Yep, same room. We're gonna, keep it televised. We're doing everything live, or recorded at least, so that community members can go back and watch this and hopefully get all the questions answered. And by the way, the whole purpose of this is to get everybody's questions answered. So I don't know which camera can see me here, but, please go to the website, go to the school board website, go to the planning and building committee, email us any questions you have. We have one more meeting that, we can answer any question. And we'll have the architect here as well if you have any, we're not gonna get into like design stuff, I don't think, but if there's any, normal questions for us to be answering, that'd be the time to do it.
Can I make a request?
Yeah,
Usually we set a meeting plan for the year or several months out rather than, so we can get people that have calendars and kids and things.
we can push it out at the next meeting. I think right now we're working
Okay.
kind of with what we have, only because this may determine, we may not wanna wait another month after
Well,
we get
that's-
this
that's it.
information.
In the past, the committee used to meet twice a month and we would schedule the as needed. I mean, I actually did a whole calendar for the year.
Okay, we can definitely discuss that. I see us, going a little slow here and then ramping up when we're in the heat of things, and then hopefully being complete at the end of the season.
I'll just say, one of the school board's major goals this year is communication and connecting with the community. And so this will be a good test for us to make sure that we are as effective in communicating the who, what, when, where, and why with this information as we possibly can.
We're not special people here. We're community members that
That's
are
right.
volunteering our time to hopefully bring awareness and
Yep.
take care of the school. That's why
Yep.
I'm here. So, thank you for that, Bill, because that's our goal. We've set the next meeting date. So, next steps, sure, if you want to discuss that, absolutely we can. Yeah, we, Matt had handed out,
All the map.
No, she's looking at the SIP.
I'm at the.
CIP.
I'm at the
Yeah.
then, yeah, yes.
That was last time. You gotta redo
Oh,
for this year. That's not this year. That's last year.
is it possible to get a new one of those for the next meeting? Because that was discussed at the last meeting that, in my opinion, our goal is the SAU, but Caitlin's right, we do need to discuss kind of how that ties in.
yeah, and I've heard from a lot of people, even just over this summer, as it's been really, really hot, that people are talking about, like, how do we get air conditioning in all of the buildings? And, whoops, sorry.
Don't pass the default budget.
Yeah, passing the default budget would probably be, getting more of the
problem.
budgets passed, things would be a great way to help us. But I think that, that's something that people are thinking about as it continues to be hotter and we go back to school when it's still really hot. I know it's not a 5-year,
Yeah.
I get that, but I'm just saying is that I don't know how
That,
much it costs
that
to
would
do
be, that would be an extraordinary cost, particularly, whenever you retrofit a facility. As we were talking about trying to, rework the existing buildings as opposed to building a new one. What we're taking a look at for next year, and I mentioned to the school board a couple of weeks ago, is can we put many, if not all of the programs, for example, at the middle school
Yes,
for
yeah.
next year that is air conditioned? And we may have to move some furnishings around, but that's not an insurmountable issue.
Right, yes, I was just more thinking like further down the road as it gets warmer, kind of like all the time. When, we're gonna be in school and it's still gonna be really hot and we're gonna go back to school and it's still gonna be really hot. I didn't know I know we do like the split system or whatever those are.
Yeah,
for sure.
we have, it wasn't cut out of the operating budget when we went to default. We have 12 split systems that we're putting in the schools. Each school's getting a couple in specific locations to help with those kids that need it the
I was
most.
gonna say, there's some kids that just need it for their
Correct.
disabilities.
Good
but
job.
It's a health and
People
safety,
also
yes, it's
wanna-
a health and safety update.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing over
Yeah.
the summertime.
Nice
Good.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yes, and I didn't know how, if that was something that, how could we try to sprinkle them in more? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know how much that is or anything, but if we get a new one, if it could say that.
There's where, Kate,
Thank you.
and you bring up a point there where when we propose capital improvements, one of the important things that we always want to do also is estimate the short and the long-term operating costs each year so that we know what's the impact is going to be on each annual operating budget, because it's not zero. And so, that's important. Any capital improvement project has to have some cost associated with it, and that's what we want everyone to be aware of.
All right, so maybe we don't do that. Matt's got some action items. Are you good if we tackle this a little bit?
I guess you can do that.
All right.
Do one last.
Anybody else for next steps? Anybody else have anything they want to discuss before we approve the prior minutes? Great, moving on to approval of prior minutes. Go, motion away, yeah, rip it
Yeah,
up.
That's how you do it, right?
Yep.
Motion to approve the-
Can I just say, can we put next steps on next agenda? Because I think depending on where they come, it'll help us on what we really want to do. Like,
Sure.
talk about the ad hoc committee, talk about things that we need to get out to the community, talk possibly about a mailing, talk about giving tours, every Saturday, for like 2 months to let people see the building. So
Absolutely.
next time.
Thank you for
after-
volunteering your Saturdays, too.
Yeah, I don't mind.
I'm just kidding.
I did it last time, I'll do it.
Absolutely, we can add that. We had a motion?
I was gonna motion to approve the prior meeting minutes. As what? Oh. What? Oh, both of them. Can I do both at once? Perfect, that's what I was saying.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? No? We have to raise your hand for this one, or, yep. So everyone, you do the votes, right? I don't do the votes. No?
No, I only do roll call.
Everyone in favor of approving the minutes as written? Aye.
Message just came in because I took it off airplane mode. 'Cause I
Okay, we talked about next meeting dates, which is September 4th. Do I have any other community discussion, any comments, or do we have a motion that anybody would like to make? It's time.
Motion to adjourn. I don't make them.
I
don't
don't
make
make-
'em.
I motion
Never have,
to
never will.
adjourn the meeting.
Do we have a second? Motion to adjourn, meeting adjourned at, what, 8:34?
8:33. Oh, 8:34.
My watch
Just
is
turned-
fast,
Just
8:33.
turned to 8:34.